Live from MMA Fighting Studios, this is Between the Links. And now, your host, Mike Heck.
The iconic voice of Esther Lynn welcomes you to a brand new edition of BTL. Thank you for joining us on another Thursday. We have stacked the panel this week, a panel more stacked than Saturday's UFC 293 pay-per-view. How about that? Well, at least on paper. Let's get right into things. Let's not waste any time as we first introduce a man who has talked a lot over the last couple of weeks. Couple of great editions of Damn, They Were Good, No Bets Barred, this show, even a guest stint on an award-winning podcast. He is Mr. No Gray Area, a man who wants to live in a world where Sean Strickland holds middleweight gold. He is MMA Fighting's own Jed Meshew. How are you, buddy? Look at that flow today.
I let it down because God knows we need something to bring the people in because UFC 293 ain't going to do it. No one's clicking the button to, ooh, let's watch them talk about that fight card. So check the luscious flow. There you go. That's what we're all about here at MMAfighting.com. Great website.
You're going to sell tickets now. And back by super popular demand, a man who joined Jed and I on Damn, They Were Good for the Joanna Champion episode. He's one half of the Morning Kombat duo. The man just wins awards. He's the one, the only, Brian freaking Campbell, rocking the scally, BC.
Yeah. Representing the man in the hat, and the myth, the legend, the Chuck Mindenhall. But I'm BC. I'm back to defend my title. And, as far as my midlife crisis choices, this is my favorite mistake, Ciryl. So I really enjoy wearing this hat. Thank you.
I mean, you look sensational in it, no doubt about that.
It fits. It really does.
Yeah, I can't pull off either of these. Like, I can't pull off the long hair. I mean, I can't pull off any hair, and I can't rock the scally these days. But we'll talk 293. Yes, we'll talk Izzy Strickland. We'll have a super fun final regulation round as well. But let's put a bow on last weekend first. UFC Paris went down. It was a fun one. Two big stories coming out of it. One, we'll get into in a moment, that features a fighter who did not win. The other, a former interim champ getting back on track following a devastating quick loss to John Jones earlier this year. Cyril Gane, in front of a home crowd, BC, blows the doors off one Serghei Spivac. He got him out in round two, gets a much-needed win. In the aftermath, sort of no-sold Tom Aspinall, just kind of left things open with a, well, I want the belt, but no real next step as to how he's going to get there. But as far as the performance goes, BC, and there were questions heading in about Gane's takedown defense, etc., coming out of the John Jones fight. Did you learn anything from Ciryl Gane? Like, what did you take away most from this performance?
I learned that he can put a giant piece of bubblegum over the glaring hole in the dam. And for this particular test against Spivac, that's what was needed. What Gane needed to do was remind us of his elite nature, show us at the very least the intention put in to shore up some of those holes in his game and move forward. And look, he had a second round stoppage against a guy on a heck of a streak coming in. He moved forward with the pressure on him in front of a home crowd. I did believe there were elements of make or break for Gane in this fight, meaning he had to win and look as good as he did for us to be confident about his direction moving forward to the top, rather than talking about things like, should he get a new trainer? Can he fix the holes in his game? From what we saw in the takedown defense, it was strong. And I think the biggest thing we took away was the offensive intention from Gane to sit down on his punches and really look for the stoppage that inevitably did come in round two. My only issue with Gane's performance as a whole, and I don't think this is his fault, is what it didn't do was give us full confidence moving forward that he has fixed some or completely, or all of the holes that led him to being in trouble against Tuivasa, to laying a big fat egg against John Jones. Good takedown defense, good offense. But Serghei Spivac, man, I don't think he put his best foot forward. So I think there are some elements of fool's gold from how easy this performance looked in hindsight just a few days back. But at the very least, we needed some confidence about Gane moving forward. He may believe he's going to go right to the title shot. I think some other things are going to dictate that, but I do believe in him again moving forward. I just didn't see everything I needed to.
Jed, we talked about this on the post-fight show because we really didn't learn a whole hell of a lot. Like, he did defend the takedown. It was kind of an aggressive one, but we knew that 2 minutes into this fight, we knew exactly where this fight was going to go. It's either Serghei's going to land takedowns and beat the hell out of Cyril Gane, or Gane's going to avoid the takedown and just finish and just annihilate Serghei Spivac, and that's what happened here. So now that the dust has settled, I guess, how do you grade Gane's day in Paris between the win, the performance, the mic work, laying the groundwork for the future? How do you grade Ciryl Gane on Saturday?
If we're taking the totality of it, A minus, right? Like, look, he looked sensational in the cage. I didn't learn a damn thing. That was always very much in the realm of what he could do to Serghei Spivac. Coming in, and I said this on several of the shows that week, my questions were about Serghei Spivac. Like, he's still young. He had been on a really good tear. Is he maybe a dude we underestimated a little bit? Now he's putting it together. And 30 seconds in was like, oh no, he still has that one major problem that will limit his ability. He looks like he is moving in mud. And that's like, if you're not an athlete, you're not going to be the heavyweight champion of the world. That's just it. Like, you got to be an athlete to make it. You got to be an athlete, or you have to be the toughest SOB that's ever lived to really make hay at the top of that weight class. And he ain't either. So that's the thing I learned. For Ciryl Gane, like, you just got to look like that against dudes you're supposed to look like that against. So you got to give him an A for it. We're taking the totality of it. I'll dock him a couple of points for the mic work and stuff, which is to be expected. Ciryl Gane has never been a guy who is a captivating personality. He's just a big dude who moves like a middleweight, and that's the selling point on him. But, he could have and should have done a little more to maybe build a fight with Tom Aspinall, or if he really doesn't want to fight Tom Aspinall for one reason or another, try and pick on Serghei Pavlovich. Pavlovich is ostensibly the next guy in line, right? He's got the backup fighter tag at 295. I think it's 290.
Yes.
Whatever 295. He's got the backup fighter tag. So if you're not going to come out and say, hey man, I want to fight Tom Aspinall, be like, hey, I want to fight Serghei Pavlovich. I want to get back in there and avenge it. And it's never been his way, but I implore all fighters always to try and take a more proactive hand in your own fight promotion and your careers. You don't have to be Conor McGregor or, that fake, I'm going to adopt a personality, but you need to speak the things you want into existence, because that's like half the battle in the game. Gane's never been that way. And so he's probably instead going to fight, the winner of Almeida Curtis Blades, which might be bad for him because both those dudes are athletes, and he hasn't fared well against the athletes that he has fought. So that's A minus, but overall a solid night at the office.
Yeah, what's wild is he has done it before. Like, he put himself in position for the John Jones fight. Like, he saw a potential glaring hole, and it was like every other day he was tweeting, hey, John, I'm ready. Where are you? And somehow, once the Francis thing fell apart, he knows how to do it. He can get
he's got the
in there.
Twitter fingers. He's got the Twitter fingers, but he has never, at least to my knowledge, I don't remember him saying anything that I've ever remembered on a microphone.
BC, what do you think about sort of the follow to that? Go ahead.
Yeah. My issue with him on the microphone was this, and I say this about promoter, I say this about fighter, whatever. I'm even okay if you're going to lie to us, but don't leave us feeling like you don't want to fight somebody else. And that's what his post-fight comments on the UFC post-fight show, when approached by the crew there about Aspinall constantly calling him out again after this fight. And he's sort of like, yeah, Aspinall's trying to get to the top. Well, I'm trying to get there too, blah, blah, blah. It was really Gane's way of saying this without saying it. He's saying, look, John's going to fight Stipe in November. There's a shot that one or both could retire afterwards, and a really good shot that the winner could retire afterwards. Gane is smart enough to know that with his name combined with the advancement in Paris, and boy was in French MMA for the UFC, and boy was that Paris crowd red hot on Saturday, that he could be in a very good spot if John Jones retires after beating Stipe, let's say, for a potential scenario. And then would it be Gane and Pavlovich next for the vacant belt? It probably would. But here's the deal, though. I'm okay if you sell us machismo, even if underneath it, you're a different kind of strategic businessman. I think I wanted to hear, like all the fans do, that I'm Ciryl Gane and I'll fight anybody. And the reason why I think we needed to hear that is because he had 3 consecutive questionable performances, 2 wins, a win over Tuivasa in which he looked bad at times. He got in trouble in times and then spectacularly won it. And then 2 losses that really we had to bite our tongue down to the idea of saying, like, maybe we were wrong about Ciryl Gane. So even though he repaired a lot of that public image with the performance against Spivac, even with some of those built-in fool's gold elements that we talked about. You should want, if you're a promoter or a fan of Gane, for him to come out and be like, yeah, I'll fight anybody. And hey, Tom Aspinall, if you think you're good enough for the top, and if the promotion wants us to fight, then meet me in Paris, meet me in London. Let's do a stadium. Let's do a big deal there. I'm always, at the end of the day, either be honest or do a really good job lying with some fake honesty, but don't do the thing where we can go Twitter fingers back on and go, you know what? I kind of feel like Gane's avoiding Aspinall, and maybe if we look at the stylistic nature of it, maybe he should be.
Yeah, which is, I thought the Pavlovich idea would have been great for him. At least set the table for that. Be like, hey, Serghei, these guys are going to fight. You're the backup, but how about I just fight you instead? And then you kind of can put yourself in that position. Of course, if Jailton Almeida beats Curtis Blades, then all bets are off, because the timing of that fight couldn't be better for Jailton Almeida if he wins, because it's the week before the title fight. And a month and a half, 2 months is a very long time between fights. For a big win from Jailton Almeida, he could really put a wrench into all of this. So that is Ciryl Gane. The other big story, BC, Rose Namajunas loses a decision to Manon Fiorot. It's pretty clear cut, despite what Jamal Hill might say. But Rose was competitive. She got dinged up early with the finger injury. That injury looked nasty. But what stood out to me was not just the performance, BC, but kind of the opposite of Ciryl Gane, the aftermath. She jumps on an IG Live. She kind of heard what people were saying in the fallout of the fight, answers all the questions surrounding it, the injury, why Trevor Whitman wasn't there. But the thing that has gotten the most attention, BC, she ain't going back to 115. She's planning on staying at 125. She wants to put a little more size. Weight cuts are brutal. Right move, BC? Do you think this is the right move coming out of this fight?
I don't think we're going to fully know if it's the right move until the end of the line, but do we have enough information from the performance mixed with, I don't want to say excuses, because I feel more like on that IG Live, Rose was defending herself against what was becoming the public narrative, but she gave explanations about some of those key questions we had after watching that performance live. And I think if you take all of that into account, how badly her finger was mangled and how that prevented her from keeping a closed fist and not only striking with two hands, but using that to aid her wrestling game in hopes of setting up submissions, that was all compromised. She was also compromised, now we find out, by Trevor Whitman's schedule, which didn't allow, with some of the things going on, including her building her own home gym in Denver, for Trevor to join camp with her since he was focused on Gaethje and the BMF fight. All of that seems a little bit understandable now when we look back on what was a very competitive fight against a super elite 125-pound fighter who looks like with that victory, she may have clinched the next title shot. I saw Rose Namajunas who leaned more on guile and smarts and setup, but that's always what you're going to have to do moving up a division. The one thing Rose is not going to have anymore staying at 125 is that built-in size advantage, the fact that she's taller and longer usually than her opponents, but doesn't sacrifice speed, has incredible footwork and setups, and really has one strike power. I think if she came up to 125 and had the type of debut that, let's say, Joanna Champion had fighting Valentina for that vacant belt, where we knew within the first minute of the fight that she was not going to be able to hurt Valentina, then I might have more questions about Rose's 125 upper bound limits, as Luke Thomas would say. The difference, though, in my opinion, between Rose and Joanna specifically is I believe Rose can carry the power up to another weight class. I also believe she's a submission threat when fully healthy and a good ground fighter at another weight class in ways that Joanna never was. So was she completely compromised for those final 2 rounds by that hand injury, and really should have Pat Barry and company in the corner considered trying to pop it back in? All of those, I'm going to say yes. But I do think I can peer through, realize she's still young enough, still at the tail end of her physical prime, to really use her smarts to make a run at 125. Could she have trouble on the ground against Blanchfield? Yes, she could. So could anybody. But I think her striking would help her in that battle. Same against Alexa Grasso. And she seems to really covet the idea of facing Valentina one day, whether it's in a title fight or not, just for that idea, the respect that she has for Valentina. They've trained together and putting together a really big fight. I think as soon as that fight ended, I had more questions about Rose's future and whether 125 was a good or bad idea. But after the fact, I do believe she should retain a certain level of our respect and grace to say, you know what? That didn't go as planned, but it wasn't a disaster. What can you do now moving forward after this?
And what's crazy about this, Jed, is one of the things we talked about on the post-fight show is where's she going to go, right? And we didn't think we thought we'd have to wait a while. Maybe she'd go back to the farm. We wouldn't hear from her for 6 months. And then like a day and a half later, here she is with a smile on her face, talking a little trash, given answers to what happened and providing a future and actually like looking at it with pretty good spirits, which I think is a really good sign, Jed. And yeah, she lost to Manon Fiorot, but she's still, and this probably includes Valentina Shevchenko. If she's a flyweight, a permanent flyweight, she's probably the most known flyweight on the roster. She's probably the biggest star in the division. This loss sets her back, but not that much, right? Like, what did you take away from the comments, the fact that she's staying at 125, despite a lot of people feeling like she's too small, even though Rose disagrees with all of that?
Oh, it was all bad. BC and I are not aligned on this one at all. One, I left that fight with real questions about whether she does carry that power up with her. Look, she had a competitive fight against one of the top women in the world. I'm not saying she can't have success at flyweight. She is. I said coming into that fight, still say going out. She's one of the most talented female fighters to ever compete. That upper bound is going to give you a lot of leeway, whatever you want to do. But I feel confident her power didn't carry up because a lot of that fight was strictly dictated by the fact that when she got hit by Manon Fiorot, who is not an outrageous hitter, it physically moved her. It moved her body. It marked her face up. And when she would land clean on Fiorot, Fiorot would just be like, all right, cool, homie, we good. I don't know that she is going to carry that up with her. She carries up plenty of skills and can have success against, the Caitlin Chukagians of the world, the Jennifer Mayas of the world. But even those, I think that she's more talented than those women, so she would beat them. I'm not sure that they would look good and dominant in this kind of way. And then you put her against I think Valentina Shevchenko probably beats her pretty convincingly just by getting a body lock and thrashing her on the floor. I think Erin Blanchfield just murders her, but I also think Blanchfield does that to a lot of people. Tyler Santos, Manon Fiorot was the nexus of too physical for her, but does not employ a style that is overly physical in its execution. The one time she did kind of impose that physicality on Rose in the clinches, you visibly saw Rose be like, please do not knee me in the body anymore. Oh my God, that hurts so bad. That's just going to kill her. And then the idea that, well, I want to put on some more, I don't want to make the cut. I understand that. And that's fine. If that's the reason, then you got to do what makes you happy. But the idea that I don't want to make the cut and I'm going to put on 10 more pounds of muscle to compete, those feel like competing ideologies to me, Mike. I don't want to make this cut. So what I'm going to do is add more weight and then have to cut that at this weight class where I'm not my best. Her best competing is at 115. She has 2 wins over the current champion and would have a really good chance to do it again. So all of it was weird. The attitude, and that word's a little more loaded than I mean, but just her response to things didn't feel very Rose, like you said, to come out, shortly after and have a little bit of chip on her shoulder. And that's not really where she's been her best, as far as I'm concerned. I still don't buy the comments about Trevor Whitman, because I don't know if you guys know how a calendar works, but Justin Gaethje fought a month ago. I'm not really sure why Trevor Whitman couldn't be involved for this. So all of it was bad and made me be like, I don't know what the hell's going on here. And I don't foresee great things in her future. The one benefit is, like you said, Mike, she by default is one of the biggest stars in this weight class. And so it won't be a long road to get to a title shot just by virtue of that. But I did not see a lot on last Saturday that makes me think that she is a future 2 division champion.
Jed, can I ask you a couple questions that involve one-word
Sure.
answers?
Sure.
Was she physically the same size as Manon Fiorot, more or less, in this fight?
No.
I mean
she is as tall and has the same reach. They were very clearly physically separated in my mind.
Does she have a reputation as being very capable on the ground at 115?
She has a reputation of being capable. I would not say very capable.
She's not initially known as a great submission threat, doing spectacular submissions, and has really paired that with some solid wrestling and where I get the idea that she'll be moving up in weight and it's always going to be hard to wrestle somebody like Blanchfield. But my whole point here, Jed, is that she has the skills to offset that. And for you to infer that she might not have carried power, a lot of people look, I guess technically whoever's doing the stats for the UFC did not give her credit for any knockdowns. I did see 2 knockdowns in there by single punches, one in the first round, one in the third that the announcers basically said Manon's legs kind of tripped herself up and went down. But I saw 2 big single shots that moved Manon, which shows me that the power mixed with the technique did carry up. And Jed, was that first round competitive? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, ultra competitive. Yeah, Rose had to make a certain adjustment being off for 16 months in a new division, facing one of the best in the world in that division, to the idea that she's not going to have that same length. So, yes, she had problems with the lead jab of Fiorot, with that little right-handed hook that she disguises as the jab. But she was compromised after round 1, and we can't act like that wasn't a thing, to have a broken finger and not be allowed to show us what she potentially could do on the ground. To just throw out there that Blanchfield is going to cut through and dominate her. I think
Blanchfield can kill her, dude.
I think we have to put some respect on the combination of her experience, her well-rounded skill set, and let's see her fully healthy. She went to the deepest end of the pool against, one of the top 3 fighters in this revamped division, and really went nose for nose and, tit for tat for the most part, losing a close decision in which she was compromised. You got to give somebody with that level of experience and ability and well-roundedness a chance to prove it a second time, a chance to prove it the right way. If she was saying moving forward, Pat Barry's my head trainer, superfan Rose over here at BC would have some questions like we all would. Could I buy that Trevor Whitman, who she said she was talking to throughout camp, that there was a scheduling issue? Aren't all these? I mean, yeah, I could buy that. Did she prefer to train at home in her garage? Maybe she did. Maybe that's a bad move moving forward. But if she comes back fully healthy with Trevor Whitman, I think she can still beat the majority of these flyweights. And I would be a little bit too quick to paint a picture that it's going to look like Joanna versus Valentina for her moving forward. I think she's in it with a shot to beat anybody in that top 3 or 4. And I think she showed you that, Jed. I just don't think you saw that.
You're right. I didn't see it. If she showed it to me, I did not see it. Because, look, I started my whole thing saying she can have success. She's one of the most talented fighters ever. That gives her a lot of leeway. But at the upper bound of this, I don't think that highly of Manon Fiorot. And that's where it's been. Like, I think Manon, she keeps winning, and I don't entirely get it because I'm not sure that she's good. And Rose did not beat her, and that is a big thing. It's like, okay, I think she can have success, and it's fighting. Anything can happen, right? But I thought both of the knockdowns were, she got caught on one leg and fell over, and that can happen. I never saw Manon Fiorot's eyes get real wide, like when Rose got kneed in the gut and looked like she wanted to vacate existence. It doesn't feel like she's going to do things like against the very top echelon of the thing. Again, she could beat, like I said, I said specifically she could beat Ciryl Gane, who's like the top 5-est of fighters in this weight class. She could beat a lot of women in this weight class. I think she's going to struggle against the very elite.
Don't use that as a C. I gave her the Shukagian fight. Caitlin's on the way out. She's of the old guard. We're talking about the new ones, the top contenders, the rising young names. She's a problem for all of them, Jed. And I think at the very least, due to her resume and experience, we need to give her the respect due to the known injury in the pictures that showed
Barber.
Of some level of dude, she would handle Macy Barber.
Yeah, I said she's a problem for Macy Barber. I don't know that she'd handle her. But like she probably beats Macy Barber, but also I don't know, because for all of this grappling expertise that you're trying to lean on, that was always a pretty overblown narrative to my mind. Just because she's long and can armbar people or whatever. But her grappling expertise is largely proactive. Like she's not doing a lot of stuff on the bottom, which is why Blanchfield will kill her. Like Blanchfield's going to take her down and kill her. And to her credit, Blanchfield's going to do that to everyone that's not Tyler Santos and maybe to Valentina Shevchenko. Like that's just who Blanchfield is. But look, I think Rose can have success here because she's one of the best fighters on earth. Like, so you can always have success. I think it would make way more sense to go to the division where you actually probably are the best fighter on earth and probably are the best fighter who has ever fought at that weight class.
I mean, Jed, the last yes or no question is simple. Did she have 2 working hands? Any man with 2 hands has a fighting chance. Any woman too. She didn't have it. You didn't learn anything from it, all right?
You
learned that she gutted it out.
I didn't realize fist fights had injuries. I didn't realize this is a sport where people got injured. I thought you fist fought and nothing bad ever happened. You just got into a fist fight and everybody was okay the whole time. That's what always happens in fist fights, right? No, you got to win them. Like, I don't care. You got to find a way to do it, man.
Yeah, I thought she fought pretty well considering the circumstance and was able to keep that fight close. But look, I don't think this is a bad move for her. I just think it's uncertain what the future exactly is going to look like. But she's 31 years old. It's understandable that she could be growing out of that weight class and certainly has put on, more muscle incrementally over her career. Let's not discount the idea of how much fresher with two working hands her wrestling might look, her gas tank might look, for the ability to fight off takedowns and the ability to sustain herself against the elite in this division. Questions? Yes, Jed, you're fair to have questions. Absolute doubt? No, not going to work in this case.
Bro, this is punditry. You're supposed to have absolute doubt about everything. And look, this is objectively a bad move because she's better in one weight class. This might work out. She may win a belt. This may be very successful for her. She is objectively better at the weight class where she is very, very likely to be the best fighter in the world. Like, it's just, I don't understand this. I'm never going to understand this. And until she wins the title, I'm going to feel really vindicated that this was dumb, because until she wins the 125 title, if that never happens, then this exists in perpetuity, obviously. If it does, then that intervening 5 years or whatever she didn't have is like, well, that's cool, but she could have had the belt and the pay-per-view points and all the things that go away with that come with it at 115 if she had just been like, hey, I'd like to fight that woman I've already beaten twice, including a knockout victory over, who currently has the belt, please, and thank you.
Well, I think she would have. I don't think the UFC wanted anything to do with that. That's just my opinion on that.
Not after the Carla fight, yeah, but if she goes back and is like, all right, I'll fight Yan Xiaonan now, and I won't have the most inexplicably awful fight of all time, then I'm like, all right, let's put you back in a title fight. It's okay.
Look, I'm just gonna, to close on this, I'm not gonna say that everything from this fight was explainable. She's had one of the more unexplainable careers in general, to be very fair. What's her record right now? Is it something like an 11-6? Wasn't she 6-3 when she fought for a world title the second time? I mean, she's had as weird of a career as possible. But I think the difference in this argument is you're trying to prophetize what Rose is going to look like. Maybe not taking into account enough the injury, but how she might look against Blanchfield, Grasso, whatever. Those aren't the battles that decide if Rose Namajunas wins or loses fights. It's the battle with herself. She didn't lose the battle with herself like she did the Esparza fight, like she did some of other big fights, both Esparza fights, to be very fair. This was physically not her fault. She gutted it out. Her head coach wasn't there. She'll be back just fine, Jed. You'll see.
Look, she chose, at the very baseline, she chose to have Pat Barry serve as her primary coach over Trevor Whitman. So she lost the battle to something in that regard, because one of those men is much better at coaching than the other.
Well, look, the motivation seems to be there to continue on this journey, and that was one of the questions I had coming out.
That is
seems
the best
motivated
part
to
of
want to
this.
come back.
So that
good.
is the best takeaway from this, Mike, is she seems like she's not thinking about the farm. So
yes.
Yeah, I mean, she showed the same heart she showed in the Andrade rematch to rally back, to stay in this fight. She was just more compromised.
Yeah, now we just run the trilogy with Andrade after Andrade does business with Mackenzie Dern.
No.
We do that at 125. Just do that. Yes, that is the fight. That is the only
Jessica
fight.
Andrade has to stop fighting people who are good. Whoever is her manager,
She has a win over her.
Fired. Yeah, but I thought she
Maybe
should have won the
two.
second
You
one.
thought she won both.
I agree, but I'm just saying Jessica Andrade needs a softball. Whoever is managing her career is letting her fight every other week against really good people, and it's going really poorly. Give her somebody. It's like just the softest touch ever, and let her get a W, please.
Well, I didn't think we'd spend 30 minutes on this, but shout out to Benoit Saint-Denis. Shout out to Morgan Charrier for the nasty body kick KO. And shout out to the Paris crowd. They were on fire. But
BSD is very early going. This man is starting to lay the foundation of a future Damn They Were Good episode. That man is bona fide fireworks.
Let's get him to MSG. Let's get him to MSG to fight Matt Frivola. That is the fight to make. So that's UFC 295. That's in November. We got a pay-per-view on Saturday, though, guys, and I can tell by the looks on your faces that you are very excited to talk about this. The point for round one goes to the new PR rep for Rose Namajunas, Brian Campbell. It's 1-0. Nicely done.
I'm not just the Rose Club president. I'm also a client, just so you guys know. All right. Pro-Lithuanian over here. Thank you very much.
Nicely done. Nicely done. So, guys, we have UFC 293 on Saturday, and we'll get into the card as a whole and the excitement levels for the entirety of it all in round 3. But I want to focus on the main event first. We have Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. Jed, you co-host a gambling program. You know the betting odds are very, very, very wide here on the side of Adesanya. Strickland coming in with very little pressure, not a whole lot to lose. Actually getting babyface reactions this week from the Sydney crowd, which is kind of surprising. But Jed, as a man who was on this program, the only person in BTL history to own moral victories, multiple moral victories, including one over this man after UFC 290 and DDP's win over Robert Whittaker. How can Sean Strickland win this fight on Saturday?
He can't. And that's the sad part. I have spent the better part of a month trying to get there. I got there with Sean O'Malley. It took me a while, and I was like, I'm going to talk myself into it. And I got there. And then that one worked out really great. And I was like, you know what else would be funny? If Sean Strickland beat Izzy. And I think it would be objectively the funniest thing that has happened in the UFC cage in years. If Sean Strickland goes in here and gets a dub, and I want to say ruins the best laid plans of the UFC, but it wouldn't, because they're trying to torpedo their own best plans anyway, because they're a vindictive and stupid organization writ large. But it would still be incredibly amusing. Unfortunately, I just don't see it, man. When your own coach is coming out and saying this is a really bad matchup for us, you know that the prospects of success are grim. Strickland just is uniquely poorly suited. I would venture to say that Alex Pereira is actually the worst possible matchup for him, given what we now know about Pereira. At the time, there's at least an idea that, well, Pereira can't fight on the ground. And maybe that's still true, but Strickland's not the dude who's going to really take advantage of it. And in the striking matchup, Pereira is a one-hitter quitter, and we saw exactly how that whole fight unfolded. Izzy's maybe not like quite as bad as Pereira is, but he's just a rung below for Strickland. I genuinely struggle to see how Strickland gets off like committed offense here. Maybe he double jabs a bunch, but that will score points. That won't hurt Izzy. And the rest of the time, he's just going to get chewed up with kicks. Sean Strickland's been pretty bad at defending kicks over the course of his career, and he doesn't have the footwork to do it. Like, outside of an actual banana peel or, Izzy, rolling his ankle or something, like stepping into the cage, I really can't find a path to victory for Sean Strickland. So, unfortunately, the funniest possible outcome, it seems extremely unlikely to happen.
BC, what do you think about this? Because, I mean, obviously Strickland is very well coached. Eric Nixick is a tremendous coach. They craft great game plans. And one of my favorite Eric Nixick stories of all time is we had a game plan for Alex Pereira, and then Sean Strickland didn't listen to any of it. We were going to wrestle, and he was just like, nah, I'm going to punch this dude in the face. And the fact that Sean Strickland continues to tell Eric Nixick that if I fought this dude 100 times, I would do the same thing the next 99 times is just hilarious to me. So it's almost like game plans don't matter here, because Sean Strickland's going to do what Sean Strickland does. And we say it all the time. In fights, anything can happen once that cage door closes. And there's nothing more dangerous than an overlooked fighter with nothing to lose. And that is Sean Strickland to a T. So I ask you, man in the scally cap, how can Sean Strickland win this fight?
Not looking good here. The strengths. Sometimes you have to look at what are some of the hidden strengths or the things we're not focusing on. What should we have known ahead of time, ahead of big upsets like Pena Nunes 1 and Bisping Rockhold 2, for example? I don't think the parallels really connect here. For Strickland, yeah, obviously he's got that 5-round cardio. 4 of his last 6 fights have gone to that level, and he does fight an aggressive pressure style, yet outside of the Poatan fight, has shown us responsible enough head movement, truck movement, defensive instincts to employ a style that puts him in danger so much. Obviously, the problem is that style plays perfectly to the counter-striking spider web that Adesanya puts out there. And look, if all these other wrestlers had little to no effect outside of Blachowicz and a young Vettori having wrestling success against Adesanya, Strickland's obviously not that guy who's just going to suddenly do that. The difference in trying to create a path to him for victory where others created one that we didn't see coming is just this. Look, Strickland's not a one-punch striker, not a big submission threat. Rockhold lost to Bisping in the rematch because, arrogance was always the fatal flaw that held Luke Rockhold back, particularly in the second half of his career, and it was in flow that night. I think Bisping, even in that advanced age that he was at UFC 199, is a better fighter than Sean Strickland, who has been very good and sometimes, teasing very good, but has not shown you the idea that he can be a great fighter that can do this. You need something. You need that one irresistible part of your attack. Sean Strickland is a, like I said, pretty damn good fighter across the board. Not great in one category to really give a threat. So it's more about what can Izzy do to step on his own feet. Izzy doesn't gas out, although, that did become a problem in the loss to Poatan in their first MMA match, although there was a lot of leg strikes that seemed to facilitate that. And I don't believe that Izzy's going to go out of his way to do something stupid that's going to set up his demise. This is going to be as one-sided as the odds tell you. I also think, though, it'll be entertaining. Thursday morning's press conference was wild as heck and had some elements of weird and daring charm to it. Strickland gets your eyes on him for obvious reasons. But this is survive and advance, and let's not forget, it took an incredible perfect storm for Strickland to even be here. DDP not being ready, Izzy having completely cleaned out the division, Poatan having moved up in weight, and that damn bus that allowed Sean Strickland to have basically a get-well fight before a title fight. All of these perfect storm elements had to align with the fact that Strickland's looked at somebody who can sell and talk. And it has been weird that all of Australia is like, yeah, this is our guy. We hate painting nails too. We hate anime. This is awesome. No, it's freaking weird. The guy's going to get blasted and peeled off with a canvas, but at least we're going to have fun watching it. Good luck finding gems on the rest of the card, though, okay? Uncut, to say the least. Damn.
Hey, we'll get there. Don't you worry. BC, kind of building upon that, sometimes we're prisoners of these betting odds and matchups and just of the moment in general. And yes, you mentioned Peña Nunes and some of the major upsets with these big, massive betting numbers attached to them in the past. But let's forget about DraftKings and all that. This is the BC betting odds, like how you feel personally. If Sean Strickland somehow wins this fight, where would this rank on the scale of 0 to holy crapola compared to other big upsets in the sport? And what would this division look like if Sean Strickland won the belt and then probably got a smoking skull title like Stone Cold Steve Austin did?
I think it would be top 5 because of how great Izzy is, right at the top of the pound for pound list, although he did just recently lose in his own division, but certainly avenged that. But I don't think one thing we have to remember of why it's such a huge upset is Strickland has not beaten a requisite elite fighter and a number one contender type opportunity to really earn this. It took the fact that Izzy had already cleaned out the division 1.5 times for that door to open. Yeah, Strickland on a 2-fight win streak, but he's lost both times he stepped up in those type of fights. I don't think it's as big as Matt Serra versus GSP. I certainly don't think it's as big of an upset as Peña Nunes was, because let's remember, it took Amanda Nunes, the greatest female fighter of all time, to essentially implode before our eyes, to have a horrible training camp filled with injuries, to be afraid to pull out of the fight because of the lessons she learned from the company from when she was ill ahead of the scheduled rematch with Shevchenko. She pushed forward. Peña had the night of her life in terms of chin and willpower and won that. This would be about 3, 4, 5 in that area in terms of huge upsets. We're always going to throw Rousey versus Holman there, which also happened on Australian soil, although I think in hindsight, not as big of an upset as sort of the odds or the hype in that moment would tell you. But to me, what truly defines the big upset isn't always the rankings of the fighters or how well we historically look at the champion. And right now, Izzy certainly looked like as an all-timer in waiting and building, right? But to me, it's how much of a legitimate chance based on the firepower strategy and all that they bring to the table do they have to win? In this case, Strickland doesn't have a good chance. It really doesn't. So would this be like the 3rd or 4th biggest upset? Probably would be. But I think we should start waking up to the idea that it's starting to happen more often than we realize. Leon Edwards in round 5 against Usman, Poatan in round 5 against Adesanya. Obviously, the problem is that Strickland isn't those guys. Could he be those guys on a great night? Yeah, you can lose. It's impossible. It's almost impossible to have the type of runs that the guys that we have in that upper room of goathood have actually pulled off, because there are so many ways to lose. Not this time. Not in Australia, where Izzy is 5-0. And if you want to know what 5 fights, how about 2 titles on the regional scene, his UFC debut, Anderson Silva, and the time he knocked out Robert Whittaker to win the title. This is going to be all Izzy all day. So I'm just wasting time to fulfill my obligations to entertain you as the B-side of this show.
Jed, you want to live in this world where it does happen, and you would laugh hysterically. The laugh would last from the end of the fight through the post-fight press conference show, through the post-fight show. The laughter would be contagious. But how, deep down inside, as happy as you would be, how shocking would this be? Where would this rank if Sean Strickland goes out there? No banana peel, no weird injury. He just goes out and just out hustles Izzy and beats him on Saturday.
Probably number 2. I think broadly speaking, we're looking at number 3. Look, it's going to take an act of God to beat Matt Serra, George St. Pierre. I don't think people, certainly newer fans, will ever understand how unlikely that was. The totality of it was simply insane. And looking back, you can sell yourself in the idea a little bit more, but you have to remember, Matt Serra was a BJJ guy. He'd never knocked anybody out. And then he knocks out George St. Pierre, who is the second coming. That was just not a thing that could happen. So that's probably never going to get topped. And Peña Nunes, I think, has a very good argument for 2. But even at the time, some people were like, you know what? I think Juliana Peña is going to do it. And then Juliana Peña did. And then afterwards, we see how it could happen. Because, like BC pointed out, the thing that usually gets fighters in moments like this is hubris. And they rest on their laurels a little bit. They've been champion for a long time. And that you can craft the narrative. Buster Douglas, similar sort of stuff going on there. This one, Izzy just lost his belt. So it's not like he's super resting on his laurels. And they're just... Somebody point me to a path to victory. Somebody tell me how he's going to do it, and I can start to at least see it. I have to write an article for this website outlining paths to victory, and I got to tell you, man, it's hard because I don't know what the paths are other than prayer. There was simply no way for him to do this. So it's really big. It would be the second biggest upset in my mind. I think largely it would be viewed as the third biggest upset. But like BC also mentioned, we're starting to get more of these sorts of events happening. Maybe it's just because we're getting 50 events a year. And so law of large numbers, you're going to get more of this thing to happen. But it would be extremely high up there, undeniably top 5 for me. And like I said, I think it'd be number 2 or number 3.
Last thing on this, and then we'll move on to the rest of the card. This glorious
pay-per-view
offering. Look, Jed, you believe it. BC believes it. I think most people believe Izzy's going to win. And it's just a matter of whether he wins a Jared Cannonier-ish 50-45, or if he just runs Strickland out of the building. But you mentioned with Ciryl Gane, you gave him an A-, all things considered. So for you, with DDP and potentially Khamzat Chimaev waiting in the wing, should he defeat Paulo Costa next month, what does Izzy have to do on Saturday to get an A+ out of you?
He has to try. Look, here's the thing. We all forgot about it because Alex Pereira is real cool and made Izzy real fun. And so we were all like, the narrative pre-Pereira was Izzy's in that Anderson Silva stage of his career where in retrospect, hindsight, looking back, we're going to be like, man, it's incredible what he managed to do, getting all those wins, not even being competitive in those fights. That's great. And that still stands true. All of those, the Vittori, the Cannonier, et cetera, those are all good wins that hold up. The problem being like it or not, this is an entertainment sport, and you got to try to hurt people sometimes and not just coast. And I'm sure that behind the scenes right now, the great and powerful E.K.C. Leiden is shaking his head and saying, fighting is fighting, and you just got to win. That's the most important thing. And that's true. But you also got to be dope at what you're doing. And it's not dope to watch you leg kick some dude for 25 minutes and never engage. And that's where Izzy was a year and a half ago. And there's like a really strong chance he becomes this dude again. If if Strickland doesn't just run himself into offense, Izzy is not going to initiate in that way. He is just going to win the fight comfortably without it engaging in the battle that could be entertaining, even though Sean Strickland has like an almost negative possibility of catching him with one shot and knocking him out. This is the fight. Of all the other fights, you can sell me that Jared Cannonier's dangerous and I don't want to get to trading punches with him, even though I think that's wrong. You can sell me. You can't sell me that like I just had to play it safe against Sean Strickland, so I just had to get the W. He needs to put this dude away. He needs to put this dude away before the championship rounds. And for me to give him an A+, he needs to put away all this bullshit about Khamzat and whatever and come out. We all know the fight. It's the fight you were trying to make and then got real weird and, to your credit, walked back some of your statements about, things you've said previously about debating people's nationalities. We got to fight, knock this dude out, and then pick up the mic and say, Dricus du Plessis, you're fucking next, and that's it. And that's an A+ for me.
BC, how do we get there? Would you do anything differently to get to that A+ if you're Israel Adesanya?
Well, I wouldn't call out DDP afterwards because Khamzat's going to be coming through that door if Dana has anything to say about it. But no, this should be an Izzy knockout. I get what he's saying, and he's right. Strickland doesn't have the power threat, although he is an aggressive fighter who pushes the pace to necessarily make it worth it for Izzy to do one of these where I'm just going to stay on the outside and wait for you to cross that line. No, Izzy's going to have to go up to that line, and I think he should have the confidence from how he knocked out Pereira to be more offensive inclined in this one. One thing to note, though, and I have been following Izzy's words this week carefully, really just to see if there's anything we can pick out, right? Almost like a Rockhold Bisping type of mirror. Is there something? Is Izzy overlooking? No, Izzy said all the right things. He's treating Strickland more dangerous than he actually believes he's talented because he knows that Strickland has nothing to lose. He's a crazy guy. I think it's more likely that Strickland crosses that line and trying to make something happen and gets served, maybe not as quickly and dramatically as Poatan did, but on that aspect. But the idea of how is this an A+? Well, yeah, a knockout of Strickland, some type of emoji celebration, and then a nice call out in any direction would be great. But how about this? One thing Izzy did say this week is he doesn't expect Strickland to stand with him. He thinks Strickland will be trying some wrestling on him. And he said he did bring in Craig Jones of No Spears fame to really work with him on the ground. Obviously, Craig Jones has been a big part in taking Alexander Volkanovski, already one of the best fighters in the world today, if not the best, and really helping him round out his ground game and the work he was able to do opposite Islam Makhachev to really become number one with a bullet pound for pound, even off of a loss to Makhachev. Izzy said, look, I've been all around the world with Craig lately. If we got to take this guy down and get our first submission win, we're willing to do that too. I think that's the real potential for A+ for Izzy. If he can beat up Strickland on the feet and then maybe F around and try something a little bit different to put him away. But after the fact, when there are big upsets, we do try to say, man, what did we miss? What should we have saw coming? Guys, I know joint manipulation is banned in the UFC. And I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, but are titty twisters legal? Because if there's any hole in Izzy's game, it's the fact that right nip does sag dangerously low. No, not due to PEDs, really due to overexertion. But if Strickland can get on that and really just yank it, he's got a shot. If not, no, it's a knockout, guys. I mean, come on, what are we doing here?
I mean, this fight could have it all. We could get an awful waffle. We could get one of those sunburn things, some noogies, the whole kit and caboodle in this one. I love it. Let's move on. There are some things to talk about with the rest of this card, mostly based on what happened earlier today. And I know you're looking at me stunned, Jed.
I'm fairly certain noogies are allowed. I don't think that titty twisters are. So factor that into your predictions.
Well, you're gonna have to go to the next ABC meeting and put together a pitch there, BC,
Dude,
to
Mazzulli,
add this to the rule set.
Yeah, Mazzulli is not ready for a titty twister. I'm telling
And at the minimum,
for-
at the minimum, that feels like that falls under unsportsmanlike conduct.
Well, as we know, referees don't call shit in MMA, so maybe it will be legal for the first two
It's true.
before we start taking points away.
Nothing's illegal if you just do it. It's all fine.
The point for round 2 goes to Jed Meshew. It's 1-1. Nicely done.
Now let's talk about the rest of this card.
Yes. Hopefully this will not be a 30-minute segment, but BC, let's go here. 12 fights. We got a lot of local flavor on this one from the Oceanic region. We have the main event. We got Tai Tuivasa. Everybody loves Tai Tuivasa taking on Alexander Volkov in the co-main. Manel Kape was supposed to fight Kai Kara-France. That was a great fight. Kara-France, concussion. They almost fought today at the press conference, and we'll get into that in a moment. Kape now facing a 22-year-old unbeaten newcomer. I hate to even ask this question, but we got it, man. We if it's one thing we do, we tell the truth. On paper, is this the worst pay-per-view of 2023? Is this worse than 288?
Oh yeah. I'm trying to figure out where this fits all time. I mean, it's hard to really make that distinction because the UFC really did go through some lean times in the early 2000s of trying to just keep the brand together post Zuffa purchase and figure it out. In modern times, in this calendar year, which I hate to be that Debbie Downer because we all love MMA every Saturday night like clockwork, but no, it's been a interesting year in matchmaking. Not great, unexplainably not great. It's hard, right? In theory to complain when we got a UFC Paris Fight Night card that felt like more than your average Fight Night card. And next week we get a UFC Noche card that feels a little bit more, almost like a low level pay-per-view. Well, that produced a low level pay-per-view in between. In fact, the lowest of lows. Am I interested? Did Manel Kape steal the show today that I suddenly want to see everything he does moving forward? Yes. Is Carlos Olberg a beautiful man enough that I'd pay to see his DMs? Also true. But outside of Tai Tuivasa, there really is not another storyline that really should attract your attention, your care, and I think most importantly, your wallet. And I don't think that's me trying to be some negative Nancy that's trying to take money away from the UFC. It's just, again, this is kind of just rob Peter to pay Paul. Let's fill out our dates. The story that matters here is Tai Tuivasa coming off of not only two devastating losses, but in a 2-month span with some poor matchmaking choices, and then a surprise 10-month layoff for him. He's back in the deep end of pool against Alexander Volkov, which either means Volkov is the best of the heavyweights who have no chance to win a title or the worst of the elite ones. But I think that what I'm focused on is not Tuivasa's new wild salad on top of his head or the outfit that he wore. It's the first 30 seconds to 60 seconds of this fight against Volkov. That'll show me who Tai Tuivasa actually believes he is moving forward. Because if he stays on this path of partying, good guy, fan favorite, I'll drink, hey, take a shit in your shoe, I'll eat it too, whatever you got, bro. It's all about having a good time. You do have a window, tie, in a star-studded heavyweight division to prove us wrong and make some huge noise and thunder. Did I ever believe heading into the Ciryl Gane fight that Tai Tuivasa had a chance to become a legitimate elite heavyweight and title challenger? No. Did I learn in that fight that there's a window that maybe I'm underestimating everything that's under that hood? Yes, he does have an elite next level caveman chin. He has legitimate power. He's way more athletic than people give him credit to get in position to land big shots. He's also a big boy, not easy to throw around and handle, but he looks at this sport as a big party, which is his right and his choice. He's in it for the paydays. He's basically on his way of being Derek Lewis 2.0. Being Derek Lewis 2.0 still gets you a lot of money, still gets you high placement, still puts you in fun fights. But I need to see a recommitment to his game from this 10-month absence. I need to see an attempt at rounding out the holes in his game, an attempt at coming in really better shape, which I don't think seeing him this week he might have necessarily did. I want to see the intention of Tuivasa in the first minute of this fight, because if it's caveman fun, well, we're all going to have a good time, but this guy's going to juggle wins and losses for the rest of his career. When I'm telling you, heavyweight may be deep again, but it's still top heavy deep. This guy proved to me against Cyril Gane, he can surprise an MFer. I think it's time he goes all in on his career. I really want to see him give it the best shake. I have no level of confidence that he sees it that same way.
That was that was a compelling pitch right there. You might have sold a pay-per-view or two right there, BC, to get people to watch Tai Tuivasa. Jed, are you willing to sell some pay-per-views, or is this ain't worth selling for you?
No, this is the worst card by far. And frankly, I'm offended. I think Brian should be depressed and ashamed about what he is asking for right here, because he's asking us to take Tai Tuivasa, a man who we know who he is. I said when he beat Derek Lewis and was inexplicably like the number 3 in our rankings or whatever, I was like, this is pretty clearly the highest he's ever going to get, because it's a miracle he's here now. Why are we trying to make him a good fighter? We know what he is. Don't change this man. Let him fly his flag and just be Derek Lewis 2.0. Fun and exciting, and he's going to beat the hell out of some dudes, and he's going to get iced up by some dudes. That's going to be awesome. I don't need to see a recommitment to his game. Honestly, I don't even know what a recommitment to his game would look like. What is a Tai Tuivasa who's technically sound or like well-rounded? That's not a Tai Tuivasa I want to engage with. If you tell me now that this dog shit pay-per-view is about to have Tai Tuivasa committed to becoming a better martial artist, that makes me want this less. I want Tai Tuivasa who's going to rumble young man rumble with Volkov in there, because that's the only selling point to this pay-per-view. If you are spending $80, it's either because you are really into Ciryl Adesanya, really want to see Sean Strickland get knocked out, and I promise you there is a highlight that you can watch that's going to be way doper and free on the internet. If that's your game, you don't need to give the UFC $80 for that. Or you just want to watch some oceanic fighters, some Aussies and some Kiwis do some dirt, and because you're going to get that. Justin Toff is about to chuck them, and so like this will be a fun pay-per-view main card. Unless Brian gets his way and we've got mixed martial artist Tai, then this is going to be weird and awful. So no, I don't want to see that at all. I don't want to pay $80 for this. Fortunately, I don't have to. This wonderful website is going to cover that for me, so I can cover this fantastic event. I don't actually know if I can say this on air. I'm going to do it. And here's how bad this card is, Mike. We had an argument in the pre-fight thing like a week ago about this. Is this the worst pay-per-view? And we did a round table on it. And somebody said some of the other, it was like, no, this is very clearly the worst pay-per-view. And then I now feel 1,000% vindicated. We aren't even going to do live blogs for all of the pay-per-view. We do live blogs for every pay-per-view fight for as long as I've been here. And we're just like, honestly, not even worth it. Do we care about a live blog for Justin Toff Austin Lane? We don't. This is the worst pay-per-view by a long shot. And if Tai isn't fun, then this is going to be a catastrophe of an event.
Wow. I love the counterpoint here.
I mean, Jed, I don't want to take what Tai can't give, but I'd rather him starve a little bit than keep eating that bread and actually go after it. All right. Sorry that I would want somebody to fulfill the full wishes of their potential here, including your hairstyle. Okay. Including your hairstyle, Jed. It's time. Okay. It's time. It is time.
Tai's fulfilling all the wishes of his thing, of his style. It's the best. Just put him in there to rumble. Volkov's going to rumble. We don't need Tai to fight Tom Aspinall or whatever. That's going to be boring.
But Jed, can't we have both? Can we have both? Look at Derek Lewis. We got abs out of Derek Lewis. Dude is in the best shape of his life. What's the first thing he did against Marcus Rogério de Lima? He didn't go for a takedown. He didn't sweep the leg. He threw a fucking flying knee. Tai Tuivasa throwing flying knees. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, it's against.
I think that's all
Marcus
BC's trying to say.
De Lima.
Well, look.
If BC's definition of becoming a better mixed martial artist is to add flying knees to your game, then okay. One, that's insane in a way that I would love. So I'm absolutely for it. But usually when people say become a better mixed martial artist, they mean, John Jones, instead of doing dope spinning stuff, why don't you learn to jab and stay away from people and become a substantially shittier and less interesting fighter? I don't want that for Tai. I want my man to get in and chuck him and just see what happens, because that's fun. It's who he is.
I want to add this to this extended point, if you let me, Michael. Can I call you that?
Honored.
I hope I can.
Michael.
I don't think this is sustainable for the UFC. This level of sort of watered down matchmaking where we're not really going to comment about it, and luckily no one's going to raise their hand at the press conferences and bring it up and be like, hey, Dana, is there like a reason why this year's kind of sucked outside of the main and co-mains? Like, what's really going on here? Obviously, we get financially sort of fulfilling the deal, trying to minimize what they deem unnecessary expenses. Hey, a lot of debt to pay off, especially after Endeavor just bought the WWE. But I'm a little bit nervous, mixed with the obvious post realities of this lawsuit that the fighters are now bringing to court, and the idea of maybe, flipping upside down the whole idea of free agency and draconian contracts and all of that. I mean, it just feels like UFC doesn't care at all. I did talk to some, readers, followers of mine down under, and they're like, there's no buzz for this Australian card, like whatsoever. Nobody's talking about it except for the UFC social accounts. And oh, by the way, it's like $1,400 Australian to like get into the building here. UFC is price gouging around the globe right now at a level you only see in Las Vegas Mayweather boxing, and the cards are getting worse. This ain't long-term sustainable, the road we're on right now. Does everybody understand this? Like, what are we doing here?
You see, I mean, I hope you're right, but this card sold out before it even had a main event. Tai Tuivasa Volkov is the only fight announced, and it's sold out. It's insane.
Okay. There's a short term that's going to keep working on name value and brand, but how many fans are you turning away? How many people are you forcing to illegally stream? Because, they might want to have a watch party, but dude, can you pay for this? This is unacceptable matchmaking. No, it really is. And I get if you're just saying, look, I don't care. I illegally stream them all anyway. We had a good card last week. We got a decent card next week. This card will be fine. Maybe it will be. Maybe some unknown oceanic brawlers are going to come out and steal the show. But this is not growing the sport. If anything, you're slowly squeezing your hardcore fans, which boxing does all the time. So I'm not going to sit here and try to defend my favorite sport, but that's the problem. I watch what goes on in boxing. I watch that slippery slope happen. Our favorite boys over the UFC are sliding right into that same model very slowly but surely, and it's all about money at the end of the day. So whatever. I don't know. Whatever.
100%. Oh, you're absolutely right. That's the point. It's all about money. They're paying the UFC millions to come and host a card that is selling out. They don't care how many pay-per-view buys this thing is going to do because they're getting a big bunch of money from the broadcasting partners too. So none of that matters right now. But to your point, I hope you're right. I hope eventually we get to a point where it's like, I'm not spending $775 to sit in the balcony to watch Manel Kopp fight a 7-0 newcomer. No offense to either of those guys, but I mean, come on now.
I'm the main card. I mean, can Parker Porter be the special guest referee for this Tafa Lane unnecessary rematch? I mean, what are we doing here?
I'm glad you said Parker
this
Porter,
rematch is very necessary.
Look, you guys can spend.
We didn't get an answer in the first one, guys. We need this rematch.
Yes, I don't need an answer. All right.
Listen, you mentioned the GOAT, Parker Porter. If you don't want to spend $85 on this pay-per-view, joining us for Tai Tuivasa versus Alexander Volkov on the MMA Fighting Watch Party.
No way.
Will be Parker Porter. He will be watching the fight with us. He will be zoomed in, but he will be there watching the fight with us. He will be.
Share my Connecticut love and respect with him, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh God, I think he's going to be showered with praise. But real quick before we move on to
Mike, can I say something before you move on?
I would love you to, please.
One, I know everyone's asking. The committee met, and this officially received 0 Michelin stars. If you are in Sydney, Australia, I wouldn't even go. Like, I'm not even kidding. I would not pay the price of entry to go to this if I were in Sydney. Sydney's a vibrant city. There's a lot of stuff going on. Go out, be with your friends. If you're not in Sydney, you should go to MMAfighting.com, great website. We'll keep you updated on all the things that are happening, even though we won't have live blogs for the main card. But most importantly, Mike, the thing I wanted to say was, instead of spending $80 to watch, I'm going to say 3 predictable outcomes, 1 coin flip and 1 genuinely who gives a shit. What you can do instead is watch that watch party where y'all will at least feign interest in these 5 fights, and so you can get the experience of watching it without spending $80. Because to my understanding, the watch party remains free. That is free content for you to enjoy instead of watching Ciryl Adesanya jab and low kick Sean Strickland for 25 minutes. I know which one I'd choose.
Yes. And I have bets on this card for the sake of entertainment. So you'll get to see those bets on the watch party as well. Real quick, and then we'll go on to the fun game. BC, best fight on this card that nobody's talking about. And obviously there's a number of them to choose from.
I mean, there's a reason, Mike, that nobody's talking about this whole damn card. I do want to see what's going on with Carlos Olberg, who I talked about before. 32 years old, but that 4 straight victories, the last 3 by first round knockout. He's handsome as crap. He's the cute younger brother at the city kickboxing factory, that right there. I don't expect that he's moving up to a level where we're going to call these live bodies Jung Da-un, but that's sort of outside of Jack Della Maddalena, which seems to be the next thing from Australia. Olberg might have a moment here. Let's see what happens here. But no, I'm not. What do you want me? You want me to actually like sell the rest of these fights? No.
I'm not asking. I'm asking to sell yourself on one fight that you really like on this card that no one's talking about. I
like Manel Kopp. I don't like this fight, but I like Manel Kopp. I mean, I like that guy with that awful nickname too, right? What was that guy?
The Pleasure Man.
Yeah.
Look,
basically, I would pay for this pay-per-view just to see how awkward they can use the Pleasure Man nickname on the commentary team. That's the only reason why I'm here, okay?
All right.
Look, we talked about it on No Bets Barred this week, and I have almost nothing good to say about this fight card. But credit. And this was pointed out to me by Connor Burks. This was not a Jed Meshew find, so shouts to CB. Absolute credit to whoever went Carlos Ladies Night Olberg. That fight leads directly into the Pleasure Man fight. So that's some classic Joe Silva fight card building right there. And I see you, whoever's doing that work. Good work.
There you go. Do you have a low-key banger, Jen?
I do. We also talked about this briefly on No Bets Barred this week, and it's not a fight that anybody would think about. But it has particularly interesting to me for the dumbest of reasons.
I know what you're gonna say.
It's Kevin Gisette versus Kiefer Crosby. One, Kevin Gisette is a French fighter who wasn't at Paris because he's a CKB dude, which is hilarious to me. That's like, yeah, no, we'll just do the CKB thing. It's fine. But Kiefer Crosby is really the main attraction here, because I did not realize that Kiefer Crosby has made a career of beating up bums in the best way possible. He most recently fought at Kingpin and fought Aaron Chalmers in Kingpin, which is delightful. And I put myself in tears laughing when I discovered that within the past calendar year, he fought Brian Lowenjo, who's like, if you were deep in the forum game, like 12, 15 years ago, you'd be like, hey, wasn't that a jobber in like Pride and Rings? Like, yeah. And this dude fought him when he's like pushing 50. So Kiefer Crosby, shouts to you and your management for just getting the dubs in however you can. So I'm looking forward to seeing this travesty unfold.
From Kingpin to the UFC. What a freaking story. Yes, I listened to
Dude, he went from Bellator.
I'm laughing with you.
He fought like real people in Bellator, lost, and then was like, what if instead I fight a 50-year-old guy with a 6-12 record who was jobbing in rings in the 1990s? What an incredible career arc. I love it so much. I hope Kiefer Crosby wins just forever, but I bet against him on principle.
I was just going to say, did you bet on Crosby? I guess you didn't. So
no, bet against him on principle. It's funny.
Hey, listen. If this last segment didn't get you to get excited for UFC 293, there's literally nothing else that can be done to get you into UFC 293. So
you could replace some of these fights with good fights. That might get me interested.
Well, let's move on to a fun final round that kind of has to do with UFC 293, but not really. The point for round 3 goes to, I mean, if you make a Brian Lowenjo reference on BTL, you're pretty much guaranteed a point, and that's what's happening here. 2-1, Jed Meshew. Fun round, though. I mean,
shouts to Brian Lowenjo, man.
Yes, absolutely.
It had been like well over a decade since I had thought of him as a person.
Yes. So, all right. So for this final round, we're going to play a fun little game. We're going to react to some things that UFC President Dana White has said over the last few days. And you guys are going to tell me whether he's right, wrong, or he's like kind of right, kind of wrong. So Jed, we're going to begin with you. This first comment, let me
Wrong.
just pull it up here. At the Contender Series
Wrong.
post-fight presser, Dana White was asked about his interest in the UFC buying Bellator. Just recently, Front Office Sports reported that PFL was nearing a deal to buy out Bellator for a valuation of $500 million. None of that has been confirmed. These are being reported. Few days later, PFL announces a plan to sell minority stake in the company to SRJ Sports Investments, which is an offspring of the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, for $100 million, which has only increased the conversations amongst the MMA community about PFL purchasing Bellator. So when Dana was asked about the UFC's interest in Bellator, here's what he said. Quote, "Why on God's green fucking earth would anybody buy Bellator? So what we were just talking about with business and making the right moves and making the right decisions, there's been lots of bad ones. Bellator would be one of the effing biggest. Why anybody would buy Bellator is beside me, but sit back and see how this plays out. I'm excited." Jed, is he right, wrong, or kind of right, kind of wrong in your reaction to these comments?
I'm sorry. I missed this news, and I am still just dying at the $500 million valuation. That is absolutely incredible. Dude, I freaking love business deals because they're just 93% just total nonsense. I don't remember what the Dana quote was, so I'm going to say wrong because it is wrong. This was the one about why would anyone want to buy Bellator?
Yes.
Because they have good fighters. I don't actually totally disagree in that, like, I'm not really interested in buying Bellator the brand because I don't know that it matters. But if that's the shortcut to getting access to fighters, I mean, I could turn it around and be like, why did you buy Pride? What did you get from Pride that you spent, like, I think it was like $120 million or something to buy Pride? It's like a decent chunk of change. And they got a video library that is not worth that much money. And they got like 12 fighter contracts. And I was like, so this is probably a better deal, certainly for the PFL in their circumstance, if it goes through, because Bellator holds 10% of the best fighters in the world. Like, I think I did the math a while ago. I haven't updated it, so maybe it's changed a little bit, but 10% of the fighters in the MMA Fighting Global rankings, the only rankings that really matter, are Bellator fighters. So they have by far the biggest selection of top talent that isn't in the UFC, and purchasing Bellator gives you a dramatic increase in the quality of your fight roster, whoever you are. So, I mean, honestly, the UFC should buy it because they got 42 events a year to fill out and they could use some help. So maybe we wouldn't be getting stuff like 293 and be expected to pay $80 for it. So all the way wrong is my answer.
BC, right, wrong, or in the middle?
Kind of more in the middle. You'd have to say, look, like, is that evaluation large? Yes. But is Dana, shitting on a competitor here unnecessarily? Yeah. I mean, Jed just laid it out with the percentage of highly ranked fighters. And if you look at Bellator right now, what's the best thing they've done in recent years? Develop homegrown talent that sometimes we start to make those arguments. People like Vadim Nemkov, Yaroslav Amislov, now Usman Nurmagomedov, the arguments of, hey, does UFC really have the best fighter in this specific division, or is there an argument? You've got what's left of the great Patricio Pitbull. You've got Aaron Pico. You've got a good mixture of old and new, which would make it valuable for PFL because they're going to have one shot, and that one shot is next year to legitimately make a run at getting some level of a dent in the competition monopoly monsopsony. I need John S. Nash to actually pronounce these words right, that UFC holds on the business right now. So it would be a very smart move for them. So Dana would be wrong to crap all over that. And one other thing here where Dana's wrong and I don't love it. It would be a Vince McMahon move, and Dana has made many Vince McMahon moves, and the Vince McMahon before he touched all those ladies, right? Like that Vince. A Vince McMahon move would be what you referenced. Buying Pride to shut it down, buying Strikeforce to shut it down. If the UFC was still looking at growing the sport and dominating the world with the same passion and fervor they once had, they probably would have already bought Bellator before PFL could, shut it down and absorbed, again, a very talented roster into what their roster, which is already the most talented in the world. The problem is, instead of doing stuff like that, Dana's willing to sit on his laurels and take his eye off the ball. That's actually a good thing if true competition in this space is your hope and your goal, not because any of us actually believe that this damn smart cage, I mean, how intelligent could this piece of metal actually be, could lead them to be like a legitimate, WCW to WWF type deal. But could PFL become, like where Strikeforce was more than a decade ago? It's not impossible, especially in my opinion, what happens to their future TV deal. Can they become a pay-per-view home with faces and names like Jake Paul, Francis Ngannou, and a bunch of female boxers who have crossed over? They might get some attention through that, but they're going to need that depth of that roster of Bellator to add to their already existing roster to fill out those cards and make you want to come back. So I actually do think it's a good thing for competition here that Dana, Endeavor, and company are so tied into paying off their debt and pretending that nothing else matters. But what's not going to fly anymore? All this bragging Dana and the UFC does that, oh, look, another Dana White Contender Series alum has become champion. Hey, Dana, this just in. Like 70% of your roster right now are Dana White Contender Series graduates that are managed by Jason House and are willing to enter the promotion on 12 and 12 contracts. That was strategic. That's actually not something to brag about. We're slowly running out of people who don't fit that mold because that's the new factory clone system that General Dana Palpatine is trying to put out there. I wish we had that fervor and spirit of Dana of old, even though the stakes and the financial realities have changed a bit, because I'd like to see him go full on war against PFL. And I do think that's coming, by the way, because Don Davis, one of the PFL co-leaders there, has not been afraid publicly saying, look, UFC, like, we're coming after you. We are trying to compete here. I think personally, my own conspiracy theory that Dana's been told at times by Disney and ESPN to stand down a bit. I can't think Dana would love sharing a network with them, but I think the day PFL goes to their next stop, maybe that's next year. I'm not fully aware of their TV contract at the moment. Maybe that begins this actual war. And if you don't think that's fun and a good thing as a fan, then A, you don't have a soul for caring about the fighter's interest when it comes to free agency and contracts. But B, what does competition brew? What have we learned this in pro wrestling? Competition brews promoters not sitting back on their laurels, not putting out fight cards like the one we have this Saturday, and actually putting their best foot forward and going after it. So I could not cheer for this potential PFL buyout of Bellator anymore because it's time. It's time to have to knock on the door of UFC and say, okay, guys, show us how great you are again. Because when they do, by the way, and they have done that a few times this year, we've had some tremendous, spectacular pay-per-view cards. It reminds you of what it could be like, what it should be like, when it was just the last couple of years. This year has blown. We're going in the wrong direction, guys. So, no, Dana's mostly wrong in his reaction to this.
I mean, PFL could do it with realistic promotional ideology and a better statistical graphics department. We could have something
Mike,
here. But
Mike, I don't know, is this quote connected to what Dana said specifically about Saudi? Because that's one thing I think he's underestimating. When he says we've seen this before, I've seen, affliction come through and fail. I've seen people throw on money. I just want to say one thing. I'm not here to tell you that PFL is like the odds are in their favor that they're going to pull this off. They're going to try really hard. But Saudi money does seem to be different than all that other money that Dana's talking about. Saudi Arabia, let's remember, paid Anthony Joshua $85 million to show up for that Andy Ruiz boxing rematch. And all they've done since then, from the WWE to boxing to golf to whoever is willing to show up, is put out astronomical amounts of money. If you don't think that that's not something, Dana, you do have to wake up a little bit here.
Yeah. We'll move on here. BC, lead us off with this one. When asked about Dricus du Plessis being next for the winner of Saturday's main event, of course, DDP earned the shot after stopping Bobby Knuckles. And if I'm DDP, I'm taking a one-way trip to Sydney and sitting cage side, but he couldn't make the quick turnaround. Now Sean Strickland is in. Dana's response, as expected, you know how much I love when guys turn down fights. I don't know. We'll see what happens on Saturday, and we'll go from there. What did this mean? What did this mean?
It means DDP effed himself and it's not really fair, right? DDP had some physical hangover from that great Robert Whittaker win and things that needed to be addressed. And who could blame a guy who suddenly is red hot and the waves have parted? As much as I said it was a perfect storm to get Sean Strickland into a title shot against Adesanya, dude, it was a perfect storm to get DDP here. Yes, He did win the fight that I thought was unwinnable, laughably unwinnable against Whitaker, and he did it by knockout. But you should be allowed as a fighter to say, hey, promotion, I know you want me to turn this around in like no time, in like 2-3 months, because you booked that date because Sydney's paying you a ton of money and you promised them Adesanya. But just like when Ngannou needed another month to recover from winning the title, when the UFC needed him to run it back, and then when he wouldn't so quickly, they're like, well, screw you. We're putting an interim title at stake. And oh, by the way, we're going to turn on you and talk bad about you for the rest of your life. It's petty BS that doesn't make a lot of sense right here. And unfortunately for DDP, who did what I thought was the impossible and now actually is a viable contender. But again, let's not overlook the fact that it was Izzy cleaning out the rest of the division that opened a path. The same path that opened up for Poatan to get to the title level so quickly too, by the way. He may have missed his window. And here's the thing. Yeah, Dana's petty enough where if you aren't willing to fight with a broken leg and fight somebody at short notice, can it penalize you? It can. And I think DDP has benefited from Khamzat Chimaev's sort of weird lost weekend that has been the fallout of his victory over Kelvin Holland after missing weight by a conspiratorial amount to allow Nate Diaz to walk free happily with a victory so that they can still keep in play the idea of him coming back to fight Conor. We haven't seen Chimaev come off of that victory because of some options, and I think he had lingering injuries. There was a long season there. We didn't know what the hell he's doing. Which division is he going? Is he fighting Usman? What the hell's going on here? DDP had his window. But Dana just lets you know that it closed and that the promotion firmly intends, if Khamzat beats Costa, to go in that direction. And you know what? All things considered, I'll say it's a shitty take by Dana. It's a petty move by the organization. But if you got a chance to make Izzy against Chimaev, if both of them come off of, let's say, stoppage wins, I also kind of understand that. Because I think Chimaev, unlike even the rising DDP, is that rare guy who actually could become, for a season, the pay-per-view face of your sport as an absolute badass. I think that window is still there. So what did that mean, Mike Heck? It means that DDP's SOL. Not fair, but that's the rules of the game that has existed here since Zuffa took over.
Jed, agree or disagree?
I agree with BC in large part. This is bullshit from Dana. This is the type of stuff, right? Like, this is the type of stuff where you get the white knights caping for Dana and the UFC at all costs. I'm just like, explain yourselves. This is the UFC's fuck up. They booked a fight 2 months before this, knowing that in the the best case scenario happened. DDP got through relatively unscathed, but relatively is the operative word there. They knew this could have happened, and they just did it anyway because they forgot that they were doing a pay-per-view in Australia or whatever the reason is. And now this is it. This is the part more than any of the other parts that bothers me about Dana White as president of the UFC. Look, all of it is morally objectionable in like very clear ways. The part that grates on me is just, why you gotta be such a petty little ass? Like, why can't you just be like, oh, other people are allowed to have choice and thing, like, because this isn't even DDP like publicly being like, no, I want more money, but like, and that's it. Dana can at least understand that, like, oh, he's asking for more money. I disrespect that, but I do understand the idea that money is the only thing that matters whatsoever. So, okay, this is him just being like, no, homie, I'm not ready. I can't do that for you. Sorry. And he can't do it. So this level of pettiness in this stage is the part that bothers me most about Dana White still being an active role player in this, because this isn't how business is done anywhere in the world. Like, this just isn't it. And so it's really annoying to be like, hey, they should have fought. We should have just booked DDP Izzy for this event without the Whitaker fight. You rolled the dice, the Whitaker fight happened, Andy won, and now we have a number one with the bullet, no questions asked, bona fide, number one contender, and now we might not get it because Khamzat, who's been gone for like a minute, I don't know where the hell Khamzat's been. He could have been fighting during this time and just didn't, but the UFC isn't bugging about that. So this is just the shit that bothers me, like as a fan, and I don't understand how fans of the sport and of MMA and just people with like any general sense of emotional empathy or the ability to rationalize can be like, yeah, that's like all of us in that category should be like, this is stupid and dumb and I hate it. And yet there will be people probably in the comments right now saying, cuck, you beta, whatever.
Yeah, cut your hair. Cut your
But
hair already, you beta.
that's
Yeah.
business, baby. You should have fought. If you can't, just title fights don't go growing on trees. You're right, they don't. And if he was refusing to turn around after he had beaten, I don't even who like Nasruddin Imavov, then okay. That ain't what happened. He beat the dude. The title fight didn't grow on the tree. He chopped the fucking tree down while beating Robert Whittaker worse than anybody other than Izzy has ever done. Like this is it. We got one fight. Just make the damn fight and allow somebody to say no. Just people can say no, and it is not a personal assault on you or your masculinity or whatever the hell it is that makes you so irate about this shit. Just let people say no. It's fine.
Look, just to be fair, in response to those people, no promoter has been safe on this show. None of them. We spent 35 to 40 minutes just ripping Don Davis for that graphic they put up about how successful they are.
80%.
We put the graphic on the screen and just lost our minds. And if Scott Coker said things like this, we would talk about it. When Josh Thompson said things about the media, we talked about it as well. Nobody is safe.
When Chatri said that his press releases were seen by 54 billion people, it's worth at least asking if that actually happened, right?
Yes, and we joke about that on like one every two shows on this program, on this podcast network. We do have time for one more. I do want to talk about this one. This is also Dana on Tuesday, Jed Meshew, and then BC, I'll give you a chance to respond. He's responding to a question about Aljamain Sterling wanting a rematch with Sean O'Malley and how him and Merab the Welsh Billy are kind of handling this situation. And here's what he said. Here's the thing with Sterling. I'll tell you my personal experience. When you sit down with Aljamain one-on-one, he's a great guy, great kid, very likable and everything else. Decisions he makes in public and things that he says in public do not make him the most popular guy on the roster. It's the weirdest thing. I don't know if it's self-sabotage or what it is. He always seems to say the wrong things in times when if he even said remotely close to the right things, people would love him. He's a great kid, got a great physique. One-on-one, he's a good kid, but in public, he just can't help himself. Your thoughts on this, Jed? I know Dana and Aljo have not had the greatest relationship since Aljo won the title. This kind of continues on. What did you make of these comments and where Dana's coming from here?
This one actually isn't all bad. I'm from Dana. There's a major caveat. I'll get to that at the end. I'll keep this brief. On its face, much of this is true. Now, should it be true? No. I do not think that any of the things Aljamain Sterling says are largely objectionable. But again, I can rationalize, and that's a skill that evades many people, many fans in this space. It is objectively very dumb to have done, and I said at the time and maintain to have said and have done the things that he said at various points in his career. I maintain all the way, 1,000%, that he won the title totally legit, and that he should have celebrated. But you can't come out and be like, this isn't a real title. Like, I didn't want to win it this way. And then go celebrating after the fact and be like, I can't believe that people are upset by this. Like, you got to pick a lane and stay in it, my guy. It's just where it's at. And then like a lot of the other stuff that he has said is stuff that is obviously antagonistic to the core MMA fan base. And so you just can't be a dummy. You have to understand what you're saying and who your audience is. And while, again, I don't think that it should have been like a big deal for a lot of those people, it very obviously was going to be. And so you just have to know and regulate that if that's something you care about. And obviously Aljamain Sterling did. So I think in that respect, everything that Dana said is correct. He did not endear himself to fans because of who the fans are. And that's how that goes. The big elephant in the room of that statement from Dana, the caveat I mentioned earlier, is that a lot of that just general energy is driven by Dana White, who himself is the promoter of Aljamain Sterling and regularly threw this motherfucker under the bus about as hard as he could. And those two things are interrelated. If Dana came out and was like, man, Aljamain won, Petr Yan shouldn't have thrown that knee. It's very illegal and very stupid, and shifted the burden onto Petr Yan, then that's where the narrative would have gone amongst the fan base, because he is largely the guiding light of the masses in this respect. But that's not what he did. He threw Aljo under the bus and then kept throwing him under the bus at every future point, and continues to do so about the whole, I don't want to fight my friend stuff. Like, this is all driven by him. So objectively, he is correct when he says that, Aljo keeps saying a lot of stuff that isn't the best in public as far as getting fans to like him. He's just leaving out the part that a lot of that second aspect of it is directly driven by him, and he's not doing Aljo any favors. He's not helping him in any regard. So I'll give him a little more leeway on this one. But I mean, it's still not great, because Dana has never done a good thing in MMA since The Ultimate Fighter. It's just where it's at, man.
BC, from the comments that I've read from Dana, what has been more egregious, these comments or the fact that Tyson Fury has done interviews today saying that he wants to fight John Jones and not Usyk next? I saw you tweeting out. And by the way, for those wondering, because the press conference between Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou was supposed to start at noon Eastern time, it just started. So just to put that, just to see where this whole thing is going to be going over the next couple months. But what do you think, BC? Well, this is wild.
First of all, can the WBC strip Fury already for avoiding Usyk? And also, could somebody tell him that Dana once said, but didn't really mean it, that we don't do those type of gimmick fights unless we need a gimmick like that to take the attention away from the gimmick Francis Ngannou wanted to do. Hey, look, here's the deal. Dana White, you can make the argument Jed just did. You haven't done anything great since Tough. And you can make the argument that some people make when they go one-on-one with him, former Eskimo bros. You know what I'm talking about, of, you're the glorified fitness instructor who got lucky that his rich friends had that rich war chest that they could allow this sport to grow through, and also the connections with the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Let's never overlook why UFC was able to buy that from SEG for peanuts when nobody else was. Immediately after Lorenzo stepped down.
I love that your argument in defense of him is like pro-corruption. This is the best.
But here's what I'm going to say. I can still tolerate any hipster argument that says Dana White is the most important person in mixed martial arts over its 30 years. I actually could get behind that and make that argument, because a lot of why we are here today is because of what the front facing of Dana and the brains of Frank and Lorenzo have built. And I don't think he's an idiot. But Dana has passed that expiration date of being a positive for the sport. Yes, he remains his fans who will defend him at every turn. And yes, there's still, which was a game plan desired element from the beginning, by making Dana the face of the brand and not individual fighters, you held extra control over them, and it helped over with the turnover that becomes natural in a sport like this, that we're still tuning in because we love Dana and we love that we get the best fights. Until we don't, by the way, but that's coming. But this is showing you right now, and maybe Dana should have learned from Vince McMahon, that Vince McMahon had a similar effect on wrestling in an earlier period, but I think he was more hands-on and even more important than Dana. But then Vince hung on too long, and he's still hanging on too long. And it wasn't long before he became a detriment to the product in ways that go beyond sexual assault and all that, and all the other allegations and all that. What I'm saying now is that this is just a trick that Dana has acquired, and Dana's having a troubled time right now adjusting from the Gestapo past and the control UFC has had, mostly through contracts and intimidation over the fighters, into what is inevitably, once this lawsuit plays out, and I think people get common sense and get sick of being sick and tired in the way that they're treated, that eventually we're going to grow out of this and look at this as the dark ages of fighters having no control. But the problem is, they not only have no control when it comes to contracts and negotiations with the UFC and all of that, but Dana does the really unforgivable thing for a sports commissioner on top of that, which you would never see David Stern or Roger Goodell or any of the other heroes do, which is have his favorites and regularly pick out those favorites, and they can be blameless, which is why this whole Dana White privilege thing comes about. But if you're not one of his favorites, he'll do everything in his power to disparage you and discredit you publicly. Look at Tyron Woodley. Look at Aljamain Sterling. If you just end up as not Dana's guy, the promoter whose job it is to espouse how talented you are. Do you remember when Renan Barão was bantamweight champion? But no one's going to reviews because he's in the main event. What did the old Dana used to do? Get in every interview and go, hey, by the way, Renan Barão's the pound for pound king. So you guys need to wake up. He's a future star on the rise here. Dana doesn't do that really at all anymore unless it's the hot button choice of the moment, right? The O'Malley's, the Bo Nichols, the Chimaevs. When he picks out a guy he doesn't like, he's going to frame at every turn that these guys don't want to fight, that they're asking for all this stuff that never verified and not actually true. We got to rotate past this phase of MMA and UFC history tied into that, because it's bullshit. It's bullshit for the promoter to basically do that. This is one of the biggest problems in the game today. And I don't think Dana White, under the control and success he used to have, can last in what we're naturally evolving into what MMA is going to become. But eventually it's going to become a place where fighters have more rights. And I hope when we get to that point that, look, behind the scenes, you can be as gnarly as you want when it comes to business. UFC can be heavy-handed. They can do all those things. But can we make it a level playing field? And can the promoter of the organization, whose job it is to promote fights, stop tearing down his champions just when he decides to? Because what? Because they got sick and they weren't able to make weight for the main event, because they pushed back and wanted more time, because they wanted to get paid like others in the industry. Anytime someone stands out and tries to make a move for themselves and for the future of fighters around them, they get labeled as a malcontent. They get labeled as somebody who's ducking tough fights, blah, 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 BS and BS. We're too far past this. Look, it's the Me Too era. I can't be walking around with Sean Strickland with holding up signs and saying, let's get rid of suffrage. Women belong in the kitchen. That's bullshit. We wouldn't allow that. Didn't Australians have to put out a statement this morning saying, although we made this deal with the UFC, we don't actually agree with Strickland's comments about women? I think how Dana treats the fighters and how he talks about his own champions is akin to that level of BS. Let's move on from that. All right, please. Enough of this. I don't hate Dana. He's been an incredible maverick for the sport and getting it to where it is today and the jobs we hold today. But he's now a major problem in what this is going to look like moving forward.
There you have it. All right. We will move on, or maybe we won't. The point for round 4 goes to... I mean, this is about as close to a 10-10 round as you can get on BTL. But by a score of 10 to 9.999999. Jed Meshew, it's 2-2.
Score of 10.9. What a
BC, I'm sorry. BC gets the point. It's 2-2.
Wow.
2-2.
Wait, am I starting to pick up on a theme here that it always goes to the 5th round? What's going on here?
It's only not happened once, BC. It's only not
It's like,
happened once. And Jed
it's like
was the
Israel
host.
Adesanya fights
The
when
only
they
person-
aren't against Alex Pereira.
The only person in the history of this show to get a victory before regulation ran out was me. And Jed was the host, and he showed favoritism. But I do want to, honestly, this is just a selfish thing. This is just a selfish thing, because I want to hear what you guys have to say in 60 seconds or less, and I do mean 60 seconds or less. It's the final round, the knockout round. 1 minute on the clock for each of these gentlemen. Jed, do you want to go first, or do you want to go last?
I'll go first. Sure, why not? Let's lead off.
All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, and show your work.
7.
Of course, we have UFC 293 coming up on Saturday. But before all that happens, as an appetizer for the combat sports enthusiasts, tomorrow, Jacksonville, Florida, Gamebred Bare Knuckle going down. We have the rematch. 2 former UFC heavyweight champions, Junior Dos Santos versus Fabricio Verdum. We got some notable names, Brendan Jenkins. We got Erwin Rivera, who used to fight in the UFC, Brendan Davis, Maki Pitolo, and other notable names. Some bare knuckle MMA on Friday. So on a scale of 1 to 10 and why, your level of excitement for what Jorge Masvidal told me will be his landmark bare knuckle MMA event tomorrow night. 1 minute on the clock, go.
Let's go 6. I would not qualify this as excitement. I will say my interest has been piqued. What's the Django line? You had my curiosity, now you have my attention. That's where we're at with this one. I can't say this with absolute certainty because, a lot of stuff happens in MMA. I don't feel like I've ever actually watched bare knuckle MMA since like watching videos of the old school Pride days. Thank you, Landscaper, for coming up right now. That's terrific of you. So I'm interested in this respect. We get the fight that is a fight. I don't know if either of these dudes have juice left, but I got enough interest, certainly in this main event. The rest of the card, I am interested in it strictly in the fact that like bare knuckle MMA might be a fun thing, but I don't care about the fights at all. I am interested in the announcement he made on the MMA Hour yesterday, though. Alan Belcher versus Roy Nelson for the Game Bread Heavyweight Championship in October. Fights the winner of this for like a tournament. That's starting to cook something up in me. So 6 is where I'm at.
Okay. BC, let's see. I don't know if you saw these guys on the scale. 6 packs for days for JDS and Verdum. Best shapes of their lives that you saw a testing full thing of the past. Interest, excitement levels, 0 to 10 for Game Bread Bare Knuckle MMA tomorrow night. Go.
I'm going to give it a hard, morbid 7. And now you understand my gas station diet issues. I've got a black liver, right? I've got the non-alcoholic liver disease there. Here's the deal, though. I have morbid intrigue in this, but I just don't think JDS has the same level that I do. So first and foremost, let me say this. We don't need bare knuckle MMA. It's a stupid gimmick, okay? Bare knuckle boxing is also a stupid gimmick, but credit to Dave Feldman and BKFC for making soap opera pro wrestling and kind of making that interesting where both sports can cross over again. Put some gloves on. We don't actually need this rematch. But Jed said, I don't know if these two have any juice left. Oh, they have plenty of juice left, Jed. It's just not being produced by their body anymore. And I am all here for it. I interviewed JDS ahead of this. He said, I love this fight organization. I don't have to be with USADA anymore. I can take all the old supplements I used to take, and I love it. JDS should be auditioning right here to fight Francis Ngannou in the PFL's first pay-per-view. Only when I asked him about it, he told me, yeah, I can't do that. I just signed with Game Bread full-time. I fight with them now. So that's a fail, JDS. I will still be tuning in, hoping that the contract situations can change. These are 2 wash heavyweights. We don't need a rematch. But if JDS is going to look that good, and he's actually not 40 yet, yeah, he should be atop of that list of people Francis is looking at. So hopefully everybody really understands the score deep inside when they're watching this on Friday. It might be on right now. I have no idea. Is that a fairground somewhere? I don't know.
It's a five-star Veterans Memorial Arena.
Yeah, which is insane. BC, I think you must have missed the part where for some inexplicable reason, the PFL has decided to implement USADA and drug testing. So
I'm hoping your ambitions that strongly.
I agree, they should, but they do not seem to be interested in reconsidering. So your JDS dreams are gone.
Well, when you have like 8 to 10 failed drug tests in like a span of a 3-week session in Las Vegas, it's never really a good thing. All right, cast your votes.
You can have 0 failed drug tests if you just don't test them.
That's
perfect
a great
record.
point. Cast your votes, get them in, and then we'll bring in the Honorable E. Casey Leiden to read off the results and crown the winner. I think we know this is probably going, but you never know. Maybe Sean Strickland beats Israel Adesanya on Saturday. You just never know in this crazy wacky sport. Awesome. So programming notes, tomorrow, heck of morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, we'll have a UFC 293 preview show live here on the same channel, 3 p.m. Eastern. Join us for that. And then Saturday, it's going to be a very busy day. We got the People's Pre-Fight Show. We got the watch party. I'm off to New York first thing Saturday morning. Jose is in Sydney. He's got all your coverage for all the ceremonial weigh-ins. There will be a weigh-in show, 2 a.m. this morning, too. 2 a.m. this morning. AK, ready to go. So live weigh-in coverage as well. We get you covered at MMAfighting.com. As Jed likes to say, it's a fantastic website. We'll have post-fight show, post-fight press conference. On to the next one on Sunday morning as well. There's going to be a lot going on, so stick with us at MMAfighting.com. Casey, get your ass in here. There he is, hurting people's feelings with the sleeveless shirts once again. Casey, do we have a winner? Do we need more time? Do I need to stall? Are we good?
Is this our longest show ever? We're at an hour and 43 minutes.
It is.
Probably.
Hour and 43?
Hour 42. Yeah.
Hey, listen, when you got just the best minds in the sport battling it out, I mean, it just doesn't get any better.
That is a damning condemnation of the sport.
I was about to close the poll, but the hat flipped.
Oh shit. Oh, he's got the
that is the actual myth one. Okay, look at you go.
I support my friends, Jed. Can you get your own merch, please? It's about time, all right?
Maybe
a barbecue bib. Yeah.
Take it. That'd
all right,
just be too difficult.
Get your votes in, everybody.
We're keeping this thing going.
All right, I'm up.
The path to. Oh, do we have it?
Yeah, I think we have it. All right.
Okay.
All right.
I think we know. Okay,
I think we had it an hour and 40 minutes ago, but I'll be excited to see if I'm wrong.
I mean, when Brian Campbell beat Jose without actually answering the knockout round question, I think we kind of know how this voting is going to go. So go ahead, Casey.
Your winner today with 54% of the votes is and still undefeated Brian Campbell.
Hey, this is as close to a splitty as we've gotten here in these battles. 54%. You're climbing up, Jed. You're climbing up by about the baker's dozen time you guys battle it out. You might even sneak one out here. So, BC, congratulations. Thank you for staying on this marathon of a program for nearly 2 hours. What do you want to say to the fine listeners before we mercifully let you go?
Nothing.
Fair. Jed, anything you want to say?
Bagged on the UFC a bunch this episode. Stand by every word of it. Wouldn't change one. I will say, shouts to them for the Alexa Grasso belt. I know that it's pretty derivative of the year belt that they did already, but that's cool things. Continue to do cool things because it's much more fun when you do cool things. Alexa Grasso's belt for next week is pretty sick, man. So, yeah.
Agreed. Hit the music, Casey. We are done. Appreciate it. Make sure you watch Morning Combat with BC and Luke Thomas. Great program. Fantastic program. Jed, I believe you were on that program.
I was. I got called to service.
And you came through like an absolute champion. Absolute champion. So thank you very much. Stick with MMAfighting.com all weekend long for UFC 293 coverage for Jed, for BC, Casey on the ones and twos. The iconic voice of Esterlin takes you home. I am Mike Heck, back next week to react to it all. Good night, everybody.
Love you.
This has been Between the Links, an MMA fighting production on the Vox Media Network.